Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren has given Gary Gensler, who's the head of the SEC, until July 28th to respond to a list of questions that she sent him regarding cryptocurrencies, digital assets, crypto exchanges, and the regulation thereof. This story is really interesting for a lot of reasons. One of which is because Elizabeth Warren actually has a history with one of Ripple's defense teams, and it's not good. So I'm going to get into whether or not this actually means anything in the case of the SEC versus Ripple, and whether or not Gary Gensler's responses to those questions will actually have any type of effect on the regulation of crypto assets anytime soon. And in crypto news, the financial services firm Circle has now said that they're going to go IPO. They're going to go public. Circle is now valued at approximately $4.5 billion. Now, they are the company that actually runs the USDC, the United States dollar coin. This is one of the biggest stablecoins out there, and with them going IPO, they're trying to make themselves into the most trusted stablecoin. I have some details about that deal. And finally, it looks like there's some Bitcoin on-chain analysts, some chart analysts that are now finally on the same page. I'm going to tell you what they're saying about the rest of this year and this Bitcoin bull run that supposedly is going to happen. Because there's some key charts that are now coming out that shows that the $30,000 level, which is approximately where Bitcoin is at right now, 30 to 33,000, is probably the bottom. But I'm going to tell you which charts are the most telling of actually what's going to happen the rest of the year. Hey everyone, my name is Randy and welcome back to the Late Night Grind. And on this channel I'm covering Ripple versus the SEC case because that has a lot of implications for the rest of the cryptocurrency market. But I also cover investment markets, personal finance, things like that. So if any of those topics interest you, make sure you're subscribed. Click the subscribe button. Also hit that bell notification icon. That way YouTube will send you a notification when I release a new video. And as always, if you're feeling really generous, I greatly appreciate it if you go ahead and click that thumbs up button. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. It tells YouTube to share this video with new audiences. So if you do that, I greatly appreciate it. I am also now on Twitter. I'll leave a link in the description below. So if you are on Twitter, you can go and follow me there. All right, guys, well, with that, let's jump into it. So first, we're going to be talking about the Bitcoin charts and what the on-chain analysts are now saying. It looks like we're now at this market pullback or the market bottom, as it were, in the middle of this bull run. And what they're now expecting Bitcoin to actually do for the rest of the year is to go up. Now, of course, that's not just for Bitcoin. That's basically for the crypto market as a whole, which means all the altcoins are going to go along with it. Now, I've read several articles of on-chain analysts that are saying now is the time to actually be stocking up on altcoins if you still have any money left from buying the dips for the last month and a half. Because if Bitcoin goes up, the altcoins will go up with it, but in fact altcoins typically go up a much higher percentage, at least the ones with actual use cases and good projects and good funding behind them. So what are these charts that are actually pointing to this? Well, one of them is actually the chart that shows that Bitcoin that is on exchanges versus Bitcoin that is now being put in cold storage tells a really, really interesting story. So as of right now, the outflows of Bitcoin from exchanges to cold storage is actually at an all-time high, meaning people that are buying Bitcoin on exchanges are then taking that Bitcoin off of exchanges and putting it into cold storage. This typically signals that they're actually going to hold on to that Bitcoin. They're not looking to sell it anytime soon, thus making the availability of more Bitcoin to buy on exchanges even more scarce. And as we know in the crypto space, more scarcity means a higher price. And there was another chart that actually matched up with that one really well, basically showing that the number of Bitcoin that are on exchanges is at the lowest level since 2018. Now, Will Clement, who's actually on Twitter with a very large Twitter following, actually was telling his followers the other day that coming up soon, that there could actually be a supply crunch of Bitcoin in the coming future. Again, this points to a scarcity. There are not going to be many people selling because as we've seen it for the past couple of weeks, the majority of the people buying Bitcoin are accounts that already hold large amounts of Bitcoin, and they're what's known as diamond hands, meaning they have no plans on selling this Bitcoin whatsoever. And just real quick before I get to the Ripple and the SEC story, I wanted to mention this story about Circle going IPO. Now, Circle is that financial services firm. They're the primary operator of USDC, which is the United States dollar coin, which is a stable coin. And what they want to do is by going IPO, they're actually hoping that the USDC actually becomes the largest and most trusted stablecoin. They said by doing this, they're actually trying to add as much transparency as possible into the views of a company or an organization that actually runs a stablecoin. Now, they're actually going to be doing this with a SPAC, which is basically a company that is set up specifically to do acquisitions and then go public. Right now, they're looking at funding that has about $276 million already in that trust. That's going to put Circle's overall valuation at about $4.5 billion. All right, so now we talk about Elizabeth Warren and what she just sent to Gary Gensler. Now, you've probably seen some other YouTube videos that have already covered this because it was an interesting story. And I've seen a few of these videos, and some people said this is bad news. Some people said this is great news. And honestly, I don't think it's neither good or bad. Because here's the thing, if you Google Elizabeth Warren and cryptocurrency, you'll see that dating all the way back to 2018, she's been basically screaming at the government for some sort of regulation in general, because she's been trying to point out that the crypto space is a wild, wild west, that there are investors getting hurt, getting scammed, getting their money stolen from them all over the place. Now, I am not in full agreement with that. Obviously, there are some people that do get scammed, but in 2018, she actually made the statement that it needs to be regulated because it's easy to steal people's crypto. She actually said that. I 100% don't agree with that at all because that is not the case. But nonetheless, she sent a letter to Gary Gensler, who she actually worked with back in 2009 during the credit crisis. So she knows Gary Gensler very well. So she sent him a list of questions that she wants to know his thoughts on, most of which are revolved around the regulation of exchanges and how the SEC is going to be able to actually basically keep an eye on this digital asset space and possibly regulate it. Now, one of the good things that I've seen in terms of an analysis of these questions is that she wasn't specifically talking about regulating the assets or regulating the cryptocurrencies. It had a lot more to do with the jurisdiction of the United States, specifically revolving around exchanges. Now, when Gary Gensler first became the head of the SEC a couple of months ago, he's actually talking about possibly regulating exchanges. So you can see where this narrative is going. But this is where it gets really interesting, because Elizabeth Warren actually has a history with somebody that is now with Ripple. That is Mary Jo White. Now, as you may know, Mary Jo White is actually on the legal defense team of Ripple in this case against the SEC. Mary Jo White used to work for the SEC, and she made big headlines when she actually came out and said the SEC is wrong on both the legal side and in facts, when she was defending Ripple against what the SEC was claiming. Well, in 2018, Elizabeth Warren actually called for the firing of Mary Jo White while Mary Jo White worked for the SEC. She said Mary Jo White failed to protect investors during her time as a regulator. Now, that is really interesting. Now, Elizabeth Warren really has no say in the case of the SEC versus Ripple, but nonetheless, she probably knows the players involved. And even though Gary Gensler has basically stayed out of this case, up to this point, it's really interesting what they're going to be talking about, because as of July 28th, which is a deadline that she gave him for these answers, a lot of people are going to be wanting to look at those answers. But in terms of providing regulatory clarity to the crypto asset space, I honestly would not hold your breath. This is one of those things that if you Google Elizabeth Warren and cryptocurrencies, you can actually see YouTube video after YouTube video and article after article about how she's been clamoring for some type of regulation and basically wanting the United States regulatory system to step up and get their hands around it before it gets too out of hand. But in the case of Ripple versus the SEC, you really don't have to worry too much about Elizabeth Warren putting any pressure on Gary Gensler to do something with this case, because as of right now, he's just been staying out of it. He is letting the courts decide, as he should. But man, I thought it was really interesting when I saw that Elizabeth Warren actually called for the firing of Mary Jo White, who's now defending Ripple. So load up on those altcoins. Keep an eye on Circle going public later this year. Maybe they'll go public at the same time that Ripple does. And if you haven't already, make sure you go and check out the community tab on my channel. I put out a whole bunch of polls. Want to get your thoughts on the crypto space as well as some other topics. So go ahead and answer those polls. I'd really appreciate it. And remember, link in the description below. You can follow me on Twitter. If you regularly jump on Twitter, you can go and follow me there. All right, guys, thanks again. I really appreciate all the big thumbs up. Let me know what you think about Elizabeth Warren actually going after the crypto space, or if you think this is no big deal. Thanks for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you guys on the next video.